Welcome to the GSMC Pets Podcast, the show that caters to pet lovers of all kinds. We'll talk about pets on social media, pets doing amazing things, and how to take care of the pets in your life. Whether your pet is a dog, a cat, a llama, hamster, reptile, or something more exotic, you'll find educational and entertaining information on the GSMC Pets Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GSMC Pet Podcast, brought to you by our friends, the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Taylor Cowan, and we're jumping right in today. It's a very exciting day. It is a holiday in some states, others it is not. We're working on making it a national holiday. If you know your state doesn't recognize this holiday yet, maybe write a letter to your congressman. See if we can make it happen, make it a national holiday. Today, my friends, March 13th is K9 Veterans Day. Yes, K9 Veterans Day. The day when all military dogs should be commemorated. And I'm going to say all civil servant dogs in general, police dogs. God, they use canines for everything now. They use them for the Secret Service. They use them for Border Patrol, Customs, airport services, the FBI, the police, of course. And they do a lot of good work for no pay. They don't get a paycheck. They do hard work. And they're trained a lot. They don't choose to do the job they do. They are chosen. So yeah, they should be honored. And what's one day of the year? You know, what's one more national holiday? There's already, if you go look at a calendar of national holidays, there's ridiculous days all over the place. Leif Erikson Day. I don't know if that's a national holiday technically, but I think it might be. Arbor Day. If the trees can have a holiday, the veteran dogs can have a holiday. All right? I think that's only fair. So March 13th is K9 Veterans Day. The reason it's on March 13th is because on March 13th, 1942, the K9 Corps was created by the United States military. And they called it the War Dogs Program. And K9 Veterans Day was created by Joe White. He's a man from Jacksonville, Florida. He was a Vietnam War vet. He did canine handling and training. And he started it down there, tried to get some momentum, was trying to get his state to recognize it and other states, and of course the federal government to recognize it. And he was struggling. People didn't want to recognize it as a holiday, and he died on October 24th, 2009, before it got recognition anywhere, unfortunately. Fortunately, however, his wife continued his efforts to get nationwide recognition, and in 2010, New Jersey was officially the first state to recognize the holiday. And there's a few other states now that recognize it. Florida recognizes it. Michigan, I want to say, recognizes it. New Hampshire is the most recent state to recognize it. There's a handful. There's several states that recognize it now. But let's try and make it a nationwide thing. I think these dogs, they do a lot for us. They ask nothing but maybe a pat on the head and a bone in the garden. So let's treat them right. Let's do it right. And they haven't been treated good in the past. If you look back, up until Bill Clinton's administration, military dogs were basically treated as equipment. Bill Clinton, during his presidency, signed a bill that would stop that, fortunately. And now the dogs get sent to, well, they get retired and they either end up with their former handler, which is nice, or a family that can take care of them properly. I'm sure that these types of dogs need special care and a special kind of person to handle them, because they're serious animals. They are trained to be pretty intense. I'm sure they have little quirks that most family dogs don't have. But before, Bill Clinton signed this bill, like I said, they were treated as equipment. And I don't know if you know this, but when the military is done with equipment, for example, if they leave a country and the equipment is too expensive to take back with them, they just leave it there. They just leave it there to rot. It's cheaper to make new equipment than it is to bring back crappy old equipment that will probably just end up in a desert somewhere in Arizona anyways. So yeah, they would do the same with dogs. Or alternatively, if the dog got too old and was no longer work worthy, they would just euthanize it. And that's not fair. I don't think that's fair to treat veterans that way. And military dogs are the same thing. They're veterans in my eyes. They are indispensable, really, at this point. We use them for so many different purposes in the military. We'll get into that in the coming segment. I'll probably start talking about that in just a second here. Let's talk about a little bit of the history of the U.S. Army Corps, however. So in March 13th, 1942, the United States Army began training dogs for the newly established War Dog Program, or the K9 Corps. During World War I, and this is before, obviously, the War Dog Program was started, we were still using dogs in the military. Dogs have been used in warfare since the beginning of organized warfare. We've had dogs with us for a very, very long time, and we've used them. But they weren't officially part of the military until 1942. But in World War I, millions of dogs served on both sides of the battle. They would carry message along the complex network of trenches, and they'd also provide some measure of psychological comfort to the soldiers, I'm sure. I can tell you, if I was stuck in a trench somewhere, it would be nice to hold a warm dog in my arms. I can tell you that. But yeah, they did. They helped a lot during the war. I don't know if they were really used for attack reasons in the war. It doesn't seem like they'd be very useful, but they're quick, they're nimble, they can run through the trenches easily, they know where to go, hopefully. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. But after World War I, they were kind of stopped being used for a while. We didn't really have much war since then. They weren't trained in the military at all in between the wars. So when the country entered World War II in December 1941, the American Kennel Association and a group called Dogs for Defense began a movement to mobilize dog owners to donate healthy and capable animals to the U.S. Army. And then training of the animals began in 1942. And they trained them for the Navy, the Marines, and even the Coast Guard. Plus, obviously, the Army. And I don't know if the Air Force was an official branch of the military at that point. I don't know in what respect a dog could be used by the Air Force. I don't imagine it would be very helpful in the Air Force, but every other branch had dogs and were training dogs. However, initially, they accepted all sorts of dogs, like at least 40 breeds or something. And after training these dogs and realizing that they're probably not good war dogs, they narrowed these breeds down to 7. The 7 breeds being German Shepherds, Belgian sheepdogs, Doberman pinschers, collies, which is what I have, Siberian huskies, Malamutes, and Eskimo dogs, which I don't know what the difference between a Malamute and a husky and an Eskimo dog is. I know the difference between a Malamute and a husky, but not an Eskimo dog. I would kind of think they were all the same, or all at least very similar. I don't know what an Eskimo dog entails. But yeah, they narrowed it down to more war-worthy dogs, I guess one could say. Not that every dog can't be war-worthy. But we're going to come right back. We got to take a quick break here. We're going to talk more about the history of the U.S. War Corps, and we're going to get later into police dogs, hero dogs. Today's a hero dog episode. I'll see you in just a quick second.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, folks, we're back. We're going to talk a little bit more. Well, we were just talking about what we're celebrating today, K9 Veterans Day. Very exciting. And we're going to continue talking a little bit about the history of dogs serving in the military and hopefully we'll get to it. We'll get to kind of what dogs in the military today do. Because some of the roles have changed. We've got all sorts of different things now, and the programs have advanced a lot since, of course, World War II. Anyways, where were we? They had just narrowed down the list of dogs that were allowed to be in the military. Unfortunately, there's no room for Chihuahuas. I know. I can't imagine how useful they would be in a war. Anyways, back to 1942. The first War Dog Reception and Training Center was established in Front Royal, Virginia. And they initially thought that only about 200 dogs would be needed, but that number just increased and increased as the requirements increased. Obviously, World War II was pretty intense. There was a lot that happened. They needed dogs for everything. And they ended up soliciting donations of dogs from all of the 48 states. There's only 48 states at the time, if there's any youngsters listening. And then they took numerous qualified civilian trainers from all over the country without pay. They just volunteered their time to help train these dogs. And it was a very successful program. Very successful program. And then another training center was established at Fort Robinson, Nebraska. And this is where thousands of dogs were trained for war duty. And they were used for many reasons then. They guarded facilities. They would carry messages. They would sniff out mines, which is very useful. And they would pull sleds. The Quartermaster Corps trained the dog handlers as well, and I'm assuming some of these volunteer civilians helped train these military dog handlers on how to train the dogs. The dog handlers themselves were mostly quartermaster soldiers, and then they designed the technical manual and all that. And doctrine on training and deployment. And the total training time for these dogs was normally 8 to 12 weeks. I've had my dog for about a year and 4 months now, and I feel like I am still training my dog in some ways. These dogs were trained in 8 to 12 weeks to go to war. That's pretty insane to me. The basic training was, what you would go do at your local pet shop with some trainer, with a bunch of other people, sit, stay, come, the basic commands. But these military dogs were also introduced to muzzles and gas masks and gunfire and riding in vehicles. And if the dogs passed the basic training routines, they were transferred to one of 4 specialized training programs where they underwent more rigorous military training. So that, took a little more than 8 to 12 weeks. I should put a little disclaimer there. 8 to 12 weeks was the basic training, but I couldn't train my dog to handle gunfire in 8 to 12 weeks, I don't think. And the 4 more specialized classes consisted of sentry dogs, scout or patrol dogs, messenger dogs, and mine dogs. Mine dogs being, perhaps in my opinion, the most important. So the sentry dogs, trained on short leashes, they were taught to give warnings by growling, alerting, or barking. They were very useful at night when you can't see someone coming. They can sense something from much further than a person can at night, and nighttime is when the attacks were more likely to happen. So approximately 9,300 dogs were issued to hundreds of military facilities and coastal fortifications, airfields, and they're utilized by the Coast Guard as beach patrols to guard against enemy submarines. Outstanding at guarding Army and Navy institutions. Probably saved countless lives. And those were the sentry dogs. Now the scout and patrol dogs, they'd be trained to work in silence. Super quiet. They had to avoid snipers to bring messages. They had to avoid ambushes and these ones are amazing. I don't know how my dog is so clumsy and loud and runs up to everybody. I don't know how you can possibly train a dog to hide from a sniper or a group of military guys. Anyways, the dogs could often detect the presence of an enemy at a distance of up to 1,000 yards. Greatly reduces the chances of an ambush or attack. So hugely useful. Messenger dogs, they would work with 2 handlers, so they could be sent from one handler to the other to, send the message. Super loyal. They also learned to travel silently and would take advantage of natural cover like bushes and trees and little ditches, I'm sure. Amazing. Again, blows my mind that dogs can do this, can be trained to do this. And they are fast. They're quick. Again, snipers can't see them. They could avoid ambush. Seems like they're like the best of the scouts. This seems like they're just Scout 2.0, if you ask me. They had mine dogs, better known as the M dog. They were trained to find tripwires, booby traps, metallic mines. Some were sent to North Africa, where they unfortunately encountered deadly problems with detecting mines under combat conditions, which would be tough. And that would be hard for me. I can't imagine being a trainer with a dog in a war or a handler, I guess, with a dog in a war and watching, your dog get taken out. That would be really tough. And eventually they added attack dogs, which, I don't know, I think that's unfortunate. I feel like dogs are more useful than that. But they did what they had to do. It was World War II. Times were tough. It was probably one of the bloodiest wars the world's ever seen. Dogs were continued to be used. They still continue to be used to this day for lots of different reasons. Now they have tunnel dogs. These were used particularly in like Vietnam. They could go down through the tunnels and find little areas where people had hidden out, explosion detectives still, and they've actually narrowed down the list even further to just 5: German Shepherds, Belgian Sheepdogs, Doberman Pinschers, Farm Collies, and Giant Schnauzers. The Giant Schnauzers is interesting to me. I'm not exactly sure what Giant Schnauzers were used for. I think they have a great sense of smell. Rejected breeds include Great Danes, because they're lanky and goofy, Scooby-Doo. Hunting dogs, because they get distracted too easily. And then they do still use Huskies for Arctic duty training, for sled dogs and stuff, but I don't think they get much use, especially now, this day and age. But yeah, these military dogs have saved countless lives and have made countless sacrifices. So I'm glad we're here celebrating to them today. Coming up next, after this quick break, we are going to talk about some of the other civil service dogs, because they're used by the Secret Service. The police use them. We're going to talk about their many uses in those respects. At the airport, you see them all over the place. So stick around. Happy K9 Veterans Day. Talk to you in just a second.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we're back, friends. We just went over the whole history of the K9 Corps, started in 1942 for World War II. And since then, dogs have been used by the military, officially, in a slew of different ways. They've been trained by the military, and they've also branched out into all sorts of other things in a more official way. Like I said earlier in the podcast, we have been using dogs for military and police police dogs have been used since the Middle Ages. But we'll talk a little bit about that right now, because I believe these dogs deserve recognition too. Just like the military dogs, they do not choose to do what they do, they are chosen. And they perform important work. They save a lot of lives, they protect people. So police dogs, we've seen them. They can be a little intimidating, yes. But really, you see them with their handlers. Until they're told to do what they're trained to do, they are just friendly dogs, like any other dog. They might bark a little more. Police dogs have all sorts of duties. It includes searching for drugs and explosives, locating missing people, finding crime scene evidence, and, attacking people, attacking targets, chasing people down who are running from the police. They got to remember all sorts of verbal cues and hand gestures. The breeds that are most commonly used for police dogs are the German Shepherd, of course, classic, intimidating dog, but very friendly. My boss has a couple of German Shepherds, and although we can't take them to the dog park, they are very friendly towards people. The Belgian Malinois, this is the most common dog used by police these days, I believe. I think it's the dog of choice, pretty much the only dog they like to use now, because it's super driven, very intense and focused. But they still use bloodhounds, Dutch Shepherds, some retriever breeds. Malinois, they used to be the German Shepherd. You saw the German Shepherd everywhere with the police. But now the Malinois, they're smaller, they're more agile, they have fewer health issues, but a good German Shepherd can be just as good. So they use both. And in most countries, especially in the U.S., I know, if you hurt one of these dogs, it's as good as hurting a police officer. You're going to get an assault charge, you're going to prison. Which is good. You shouldn't hurt dogs. Dogs are awesome. We all love them. No one wants to see a dog in pain. Let's talk about a little bit the history. Dogs have been used by law enforcement since like the Middle Ages for many, 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 many years. Mostly by the wealthy, and it was mostly to hunt down outlaws who stole from them. In the 14th century, France, bloodhounds were used, and in Scotland, bloodhounds were used. They were called slough dogs, and which is where the word sleuth is derived from. A fun little fact. And then as London grew and grew and grew, and the public became a little more lawless, law enforcement couldn't handle it. So they started using dogs to hunt people down, to find people, to guard places. So pretty useful. They have a lot of training that dogs have to go through to become a police dog, because you got to be, look at what they do. You have to train a dog to be friendly towards its handlers and the public, but also to, at the snap of a finger, turn into a bloodthirsty, scary monster. At least the attack dogs. But same with a dog that's sniffing out drugs or a bomb. You got to train a dog to only sniff out a specific thing, which can be difficult in a scenario where there's, say, lots of people around. I can't imagine training my dog to sniff out a bomb in a food court. Because I know exactly where my dog's going, and that's Chick-fil-A. And it's where it will lead me to. We'll get way off track. It'll be a whole mess. The bomb will go off. I'll be eating Chick-fil-A. I'll get fired, and it's no good. But for a dog to be considered for a police department, it's got to pass basic obedience. They must be able to obey the commands of a handler without hesitation at all. And that allows the officer to have lots of control, and particularly how much force a dog should use on its target, which I don't know how they do it. I've never seen the training done. I've seen videos of, the guy running around in the big bulky suit with the big arm pads, and then the dog runs up and jumps on him, and he just has to try and shake it off. But yeah, how they actually get him to a point where, you can tell your dog, all right, just take this guy down, or just follow this guy, or just, attack this guy as opposed to just attacking everyone in sight. I don't know how they do it. But there's a lot of specialized police dogs too. They're not all attack dogs. They're search and rescue dogs. They are used to locate suspects or find missing people or even objects. Bloodhounds are used for this. I think all the different breeds are used for that, which is pretty amazing. You hand it a sock of the missing person or the suspect, sniffs it, and it goes on the hunt. I actually was considering getting a bloodhound for a while. I decided not to because not only are they very expensive, they will sniff something and they'll just hunt it for miles and miles. They'll leave your yard. And go hunt it down because they have such a good sense of smell. They can search for something forever. There's detection and explosive dogs. These are to find illicit substances such as drugs, explosives. Most dogs are, I think they're mostly, at least in police forces, they have dogs to do drugs. Not do drugs, to sniff out drugs. Such as marijuana, heroin, cocaine, crack, you know the whole deal. And then there's the dual-purpose dog. This is known as a patrol dog. Each of these dogs is fully trained and skilled in tracking, handler protection, off-leash obedience, article, area, and building search, and criminal apprehension. And I don't know if I'm assuming there's only so much that one dog can do. I'm pretty sure they're trained to do one or the other. With the dual-purpose dog, I don't know if maybe they're not as good as searching out drugs. I've heard before that, say you teach a dog to, with bomb dogs and drug dogs, you can really only have one or the other. I don't know if that's true. If it's not, shout me out on the Twitter page or the Facebook, whatever. Let me know. Let me know the truth, because I need to know. But yeah, super important. And, one day they get to retire. And then we get to celebrate them on days like March 13th, K9 Veteran Day. And once they're retired, they get an amazing life. I'm sure they get adopted by their former owner. They get to lay around all day, bask in the sun of their former glory. And I don't know exactly, at what point they decide to retire a dog. Let's look this up real quick. The working life of a dog is 6 to 9 years. So, yeah, you still got an extra good 4 years on him to just bask and hang out and be a hero dog for the rest of his life. We're going to take one quick break again, and we'll be back. I've got more. We're going to talk about some Border Patrol dogs, Secret Service, what the FBI uses dogs for, because they all use them for different reasons. So we will see you in just a second.
Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Okay, we're back again. Happy K9 Veterans Day. We just were talking about police dogs, what they do a lot. We see them all the time. I always had a funny story I have is I was at a drum circle once. And you know drum circles, lots of dreadlocks, lots of hippies. And we're on one side of the park. And on the other side of the park, 2 K9 units pull up. The handlers get out of their car, they pull their dogs out. And I think they were just having a friendly little time. Or they were stopping at the park to give their dogs some play, because they were just tossing a ball to them. And I'll tell you what, about 3/4 of the drum circle left right then and there. Who knows why? Anyways, let's move on. Police officers in the military aren't the only ones who use dogs. As we said earlier, Customs, Secret Service, Airport Service, FBI, Border Patrol. But I think one of the coolest is that the Secret Service uses dogs. The president has a team of dogs to protect him, as well as a team of agents. So Secret Service has been using dogs since about 1976. And they'll go in before a president goes to a place, goes to a rally or whatever to do a speech, and they'll screen the entire area just to make sure nothing's hidden, nothing's there that would hurt the president. So they'll screen the entire area. They use exclusively Belgian Malinois. I think I'm pronouncing that word right. Again, if I'm not, I've heard it before. It's spelt weird. Belgian Malinois. I feel like I've heard it as Malinois and then Malinois. So once again, head over to our Twitter page. Correct me. The correct Taylor hour is on. But yeah, Secret Service exclusively uses them because they're agile, as we said, they're good workers, and super effective at detecting explosives. With the Secret Service, each K9 and his handler must complete 20 weeks of training before they are ready to begin working. And even after training, they have to retrain 8 hours every week for the rest of its career. So, if you are planning on becoming a Secret Service agent, and particularly a Secret Service dog handler, you better well love dogs. And you better be prepared to spend a lot of time preparing that dog to work. Because, 8 hours, that's a whole work day right there. And I'm sure Secret Service agents, they've got to work a little more than 40 hours a week. They remain with their handler 24 hours a day. Secret Service dogs. Which I think is good. You should, the more time your dog spends with you, just in general, the better it's going to be. So these dogs are highly, highly trained. And yeah, they need to be with a trainer at all times, or a handler at all times, so that they don't slip up, because they perform important work. You don't want them to hurt anybody. These types of dogs, they're trained in a way where they're trained to attack sometimes, and you want them to be chill. Average retirement age for a Secret Service dog, it's about 10 years. I think since they're not doing quite like police dog work, where they're as active, I don't think they use attack dogs as much in the Secret Service. It's more of, like you're saying, like to go sniff out areas. So if they're still in good physical condition, why not? Keep them going. If they're highly trained and it's a good dog, let them retire when they're ready to retire. And dogs like to be busy. Dogs like to have things to do. So I'm sure it's happy to have an activity to do for the rest of its life. If you're thinking of running from one of these Secret Service dogs, keep in mind that they can run up to about 25 miles per hour, and they have a bite that will apply hundreds of pounds of pressure per square inch. So, be a good person, and don't do anything that would require you to run from the Secret Service or its dogs. And these Secret Service dogs are going to cost the taxpayer about $6,500 to $8,500, which is worth it. We the president does a lot of work, so I'm willing for a little bit of my tax dollars to go to that. Secret Service isn't the only one who uses dogs. The airport uses dogs all the time, and they are super important as well. In 1972, New York Police Department German Shepherd named Brandy saved the day when she sniffed out a bomb that had been stashed on a plane. And since then, we use them all the time. That was New York Police Department. Now we have dogs specifically trained at the airports. Over 1,000 highly trained dogs are employed by the TSA. And they do things like stop trafficking of live wild animals. Yes, people try and sneak. I don't know why people try and do this. If it's something that people get away with a lot, so it's done a lot, but people will try and sneak, a box of exotic turtles on a plane, or snakes, or parrots, or monkeys sometimes. These dogs help to stop that, which is very good because these exotic creatures come from the other land. People try and sell them, and then they get into the local ecosystem, and they just screw up the whole environment of an area. Look at sea pythons in Florida right now, and you'll get what I'm talking about. They also they sniff out things like ivory, rhino horns, which is not ivory, technically. Fun little fact. Rhino horn is different than ivory, which is good. Poachers shouldn't make money. Poachers do a terrible thing. They kill endangered species for no good reason. To send rhino horn to China for people to use as medicine, unproven. We don't need that. And the more we can stop that market, the better. What else they do? They sniff out cash. Cash and drugs, obviously, and bombs. And it's illegal you're supposed to declare if you're carrying more than $10,000 in cash. So dogs will sniff that cash out if you do not declare it. So keep that in mind. And they use different types of dogs than the police do. I think they use a lot of retrievers, labs. Any dog with a good sense of smell, they're going to use. And they can even help sniff out diseases, which is crazy. They can sniff out cancer. They can sniff out Parkinson's disease. And so in scenarios where there's a pandemic, we got coronavirus. I don't know if they can sniff that out. But malaria, for example, they can sniff if someone has malaria and is trying to, fly and cross the border, and it might, spread elsewhere, which is good. They sniff out plants, kind of like the invasive animals. They will sniff that out. They find electronics that are contraband. They can, you know what? This is the nicest one. They provide comfort to stressed out passengers. They have comfort dogs on planes. Some people cannot handle flying. I've flown a whole bunch. I'm pretty comfortable with it, but I know a lot of people are very much not uncomfortable with it. You get a little bit of turbulence on the plane, and all of a sudden, they're flipping out. So it's nice to have a dog there to rest his cute little head on your knee and let you know everything's going to be just fine. So yeah, next time you're at the airport, don't pet them. Don't pet them. I was going to say, go give them a pat on the back. Don't do that. It's not allowed. Absolutely do not do that. I am not advising that. What I'm advising is maybe wave to the handler and say, hey, you tell that dog he's doing a good job. Huh? That seems nice. That seems like a nice thing to do. Any service dog in general, don't go up and pet people's service dogs, and don't get mad at them if they get mad at you for trying to pet their dog, because it's not your dog to pet. Folks, we're going to take not one more quick break. We got 2 more segments coming up. We're going to take another quick break, and I'm going to talk about one of the biggest heroes of World War II. Stick around. I'll see you in just a second.
the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And we are back. We just finished talking about police dogs and the other civil service dogs we have working for the United States of America. There's lots of them. We didn't really get to the Border Patrol or Customs. Well, I guess Customs is technically part of the airport, or the FBI. But Secret Service, FBI kind of are the same, and Border Patrol dogs kind of do a lot of the same stuff that a police dog would do. They're trained in a lot of the same ways. Now, we are going to talk about one of the, not most decorated heroes of World War II, but the most decorated dog of World War II. His name was Chips. He lived from 1940 to 1946. Short life, but full, very eventful. He was a trained sentry dog for the United States Army, and reputedly the most decorated war dog from World War II. He was a German Shepherd Collie Siberian Husky mix, so he had a little bit of everything they wanted in him. And he was owned by Edward J. Wren of Pleasantville, New York. Now, as we talked about earlier, they had civilians donate dogs in 1942 when they started the War Dogs program, and Chips was one of those dogs. He shipped out to the War Dog Training Center in Front Royal, Virginia, 1942. He was training as a sentry dog. And then he served with the 3rd Infantry Division in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and France, and Germany. His handler was Private John P. Rowell. He served as sentry dog for the Roosevelt-Churchill Conference in 1943. Later that year, during an invasion of Sicily, Chips was part of a battle. And him and his handler, John Rowell, were under fire. And Chips broke free from his handler on the beach and ran toward machine gun fire that was pinning down Allied service members. He just went right at it. I don't know what goes through a dog's head in a situation like this. It is pretty outstanding. Most dogs, your average dog, most of our dogs, when they hear a firework go off, there's running under the couch, hiding in a closet, cowering in the corner. Not Chips. Chips ran right towards the gunshot fire, and he started attacking a hidden gun nest, biting German soldiers, pulling a smoking machine gun from its base. Yes, a smoking machine gun from its base. I think Chips is more decorated than many of the average servicemen that are out there. This is so brave and amazing. According to his handler's account of the pre-dawn raid, Chips grabbed one of the Germans by the neck and dragged him from the pillbox. Chips must have been a big boy. He must have been a really big dog to handle this. And then his comrades followed with their hands up. So I'm sure the battle was kind of coming to a close, but Chips finished this one off. He suffered from some burns and scalp wounds, but was otherwise perfectly fine, which is insane to me. In fact, he was so fine that later that day he helped take 10 Italian prisoners. Wow. Chips. Chips, you are a hero dog. Kind of wish you were my dog, Chips. He was awarded the Silver Star, a Distinguished Service Cross, and a Purple Heart during the war. But after controversy erupted over giving military service awards to animals, the practice was suspended. I don't see anything wrong with that necessarily. I mean, maybe not the same ones they give to people, but maybe make a special award for the dogs, for the K9 Corps, like a special set of awards. The Medal of K9 Honor, something like that. Chips gained notoriety for other acts during the conflict. He had a public meeting with Eisenhower in 1945. When the future president bent down to bite the service dog to thank him for his bravery, or to pet the service dog to thank him for his bravery, Chips bit him. Chips bit Eisenhower. Wow, that's incredible. Hey, you drop a bomb on Hiroshima, maybe a bite's in order. Chips, unbeknownst to Eisenhower, the dog had been trained to clamp down on humans he didn't know. So, he should have been smarter. You don't, like I said, don't pet other people's service dogs. They don't like it. So he got sent home in a big wooden crate back to his previous owner in 1945. And only 7 months after returning home to Pleasantville, he died. A hero dog, again. So he spent most of his life at war. His obituary stated his family sent him into military service because he had bitten a garbage collector. That's just what dogs do. Mailmen, garbage collectors. It's classic cartoon dog behavior. And you don't ever hear about Chips. You always hear about Rin Tin Tin, who wasn't even a hero dog. Rin Tin Tin was a dog who was, in World War I, they found a German war dog's puppy in France, and they shipped it back to the United States, and somehow Rin Tin Tin ended up in movies. He became the first, basically, big star of an animal. But you always hear about him, and not about Chips. Disney made a TV movie based on Chips, I guess, called Chips the War Dog. I haven't seen it. I can't speak for it. But, Chips is one of the biggest hero dogs out there. In the next segment, I'm going to give you a big list of my top 10. Well, let's do top 5. Top 5 hero dogs. And spoiler alert, Chips is number 1. Chips is number 1. You know what? I'll leave him off the list. He's already number 1. He's like the birth of the hero dog. We'll say that. I'll come up with another 5 for you that I haven't already talked about. But yeah, again, it's March 13th, K9 Veterans Day. A great day to appreciate our K9 veterans like Chips, not Rin Tin Tin. He doesn't count. They do a lot for us. Not only do they provide us comfort at home, they provide our soldiers comfort abroad. They protect our interests here and abroad. They stop crime. And they do it for nothing. They do it because they love us and because they care about us. And isn't that special? We're going to take one final quick break, and we'll be right back with my top 5 list of the top hero dogs of all time. See you in a second.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Ladies and gents, welcome back. We're in the final moments of today's podcast. Today, let's just do a quick recap. We talked about the history of canines in the U.S. military, as it is National K9 Veterans Day. Long history, done a lot of good work. We've talked about police dogs, Secret Service dogs, airport dogs, all sorts of heroic dogs and their different jobs. Chips, the most decorated dog of World War II, a true hero. Now, before we wrap things up here today, I am going to give you my list of top 5 hero dogs of all time. As always, if you disagree with anything on my list, head over to our Twitter account and let me know, or give me your favorite hero dogs. There's lots of them out there. Every dog's a hero, really. Head over to the Twitter page, shout me out, and again, maybe in the future we'll do a list of fan favorites, fan favorite hero dogs. Because there's always next year. There's going to be another K9 Day next year, March 13th, and we're going to do another podcast. And we'll be talking about the same thing, and I'm sure there's hero dog holidays all throughout the year. Let's dive into the list. Number 5, Laika. Laika was a Russian dog, a Russian street dog, and was one of the first animals sent into space, and the first animal to orbit the Earth. She was a stray mongrel from the streets of Moscow. I don't know what they did, if they just walked out onto the street and picked her up and sent her into space, but she helped us learn a lot about what animals, living creatures, can handle in space, and therefore what we have to do to send a human to space. Unfortunately, she died in space because of faulty Soviet space shuttles. You know, the Soviet space program wasn't quite as good as the United States. Let's just be honest. But yeah, Laika, number 5. Number 4, I've got Sergeant Stubby. Now, Sergeant Stubby, like Chips, is highly decorated. Sergeant Stubby was the most highly decorated dog, however, of World War I. And as far as I know, the only dog ever to be given the rank of sergeant, which is pretty funny. And Sergeant Stubby's a small little dog. He's not a big guy. He served 18 months and participated in 17 battles on the Western Front. He saved his regiment from a surprise mustard gas attack, found and comforted the wounded, And allegedly, I believe it, because this is Sergeant Stubby, but allegedly, he once caught a German soldier by the seat of his pants, holding him there until the American soldiers found him. His actions were well documented in contemporary American newspapers. Hero dog. Hero dog. And the only dog to be nominated for rank and then promoted to sergeant through combat. I think Chips maybe deserve that too, but for now we've got Sergeant Stubby. And he's recognized in connection with an exhibition at the Smithsonian Institution. Apparently they've made a film about him in 2018. I haven't seen it. I don't know who made it, but it's got the voice of Helena Bonham Carter and American Music by Academy Award nominee Patrick Doyle. So go check that out. Go check out the Sergeant Stubby movie. Go look him up. Another hero dog. He's number 4 on my list. Number 3 on the list is Apollo the dog. Apollo was a search and rescue dog who served with the K9 unit of the New York Police Department. He was awarded the Dickin Medal, which I believe Chips also was awarded with. It's basically the animal's equivalent of the Victoria Cross. And he was the first dog to be on the scene with his handler at the September 11th attacks. They helped save many lives, pulled lots of people out of the rubble. All around a great dog. And he had a good life. He's worked again. He would run in, save a person, come out, brush the debris off of him, and he's back in there again. Real hero dog. For a real American tragedy. So Apollo the dog, number 3 on the list. Number 2, Zanjeer the dog. He lived from 1992 to 2000. He was a Labrador retriever from India. He was a detection dog with the Mumbai police, and he just had impeccable service detecting, and there was a series of bombings in 1993 in Bombay. He found tons of explosives. That's probably saved countless lives. He found 56 rifles, 5 9mm pistols, 200 grenades, and 2 suitcases that contained more rifles. And so he's a hero in India. And I'm reading here now, there's even more. 11 military bombs, 57 country-made bombs, 157 petrol bombs, and 600 detonators. Giant hero. Wow. That is absolutely incredible. And finally, number 1, Togo the dog. Togo the dog, you always hear about Balto. They made a movie there's a bunch of movies about Balto. And Balto's fine. He was a hero dog too, but basically what happened in northern Canada, Alaska, there was a bad outbreak of a disease. And they needed a serum. Ran from one city to another. They had to go pick the serum up and bring it back. And Balto gets all the credit for this. Here's the difference between Togo and Balto. Balto, along with other sled dogs, ran an average of around 31 miles to deliver the serum. Togo ran over 300 miles, and people didn't even think he could be a sled dog. They thought he was too small. He was only about 48 pounds in adulthood. Other dogs were much bigger than that, much, much bigger. And they initially had him as a house pet. And then he was so, hyperactive that they got him running, and he proved his worth. He ran 260 miles in negative 30-degree Fahrenheit. That is absolutely amazing. Freezing. And I highly recommend you go check out the movie. It's a great movie. It's on Disney Plus. If you don't have Disney Plus, I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. Borrow it from a friend. God, one of the nights he was running, it dropped to negative 40 with a wind of 65 miles per hour. And his handler is, Musher, couldn't see anything. So basically Togo had to lead the way. So go check out Togo. Give him a pat on the head in spirit. Folks, that should about do it for tonight. Go ahead, go out there, celebrate our K9 dogs. There's tons of charities that you can go donate to if you feel so inclined. And next time you see a K9 officer, say thank you. Thank you for doing what you do, and tell him to thank his dog for you, because once again, we don't want to touch people's service dogs. They are not to be pet. We'll be back next Tuesday. I'm not sure what the topic will be. I'm thinking exotic animals. I don't know. But again, folks, thanks for tuning in to the GSMC Pet Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Remember to head over to our Twitter account and to our Instagram, our Facebook, add us on all of those so you can see the latest updates and what podcasts are new and coming out soon. And folks, I'm your host, Taylor Cowan. Remember to leave us all a 5-star review. It helps us out so much when you do that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to me talk about pets. I can't wait to talk to you again next Tuesday. Have a fantastic evening.
You've been listening to the GSMC Pets Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.